Hello, all. Just getting ready for Thanksgiving. I hope you guys had a good one. So, I wanted to talk really quickly about some things that have been going on. And it was just kind of an interesting situation because they all sort of happened at the same time. And these are what I call when the campaign really gets good, when things shift and change, and suddenly you're in a much different game than you thought you were going to be in. And that's what's happened to me in both Mark Hobbs's D&D 5th edition game we play on Monday nights, and in a playtest version on the high end, because of course when you're playtesting a game and want to make sure things are working, you got to really push the limits on the high end and see that all the high end stuff works. The campaign I run, because even though I'm doing playtesting, I just don't want to test the rules. I want to make sure everybody's having a good time. So I'm running my Twilight of Fate campaign, and this was a high level encounter. So I'll start with that one first because it was the one that's the most interesting and what really got me thinking on this. We were playing in a situation where they were, after our last adventure, trying to find out where the great worm of Masasul could be stopped and how they would be able to prevent the horrible destruction that was being reaped on Albion. They'd gone to the elves, which was unusual, of course, because the elves and the humans don't tend to get along. But the elves had come forward and said, look, this is a problem that affects us all. We need to sort of work together to correct it. They had some connections in a royal child they had rescued and her, obviously, father. He provided a magical boat so they could go up to the ancient prison that the worm had been kept to find out why he was gone and how he was able to use elven automatons to basically lead way in his attack. Pretty simple. They went up there, they got into some fight, and while the fight was going on, some Fomorians showed up. Now, the Fomorians, for those of you who don't know, are basically the giants and the trolls and the other factions that had battled the elves during the Great Elven War that had taken place 150 years previous. Now, they have an elf hero with them, and he's not overly thrilled with this, but he recognizes one of the characters there, and that is a dark elf. And now he understands how they were able to basically get the automatons under their control to allow the escaping of the great worm of Mosul, except for one thing. There's a large carcass of a long dead sea serpent, which of course, is what the worm is. And it's huge, massively huge. The skull is larger than any building anyone's ever seen. Now, the body extends for hundreds and hundreds of yards. They realize, well, that's the worm of Masatsul, so what is going on here? The Fomorians are trying to formulate a way to start the war up and get the humans on their side again to attack the elves. So they're going to basically lay it down that the worm is being controlled by the elves to get the humans to think that, hey, we're being attacked, and all the inclination is that it's the elves that are doing the damage. Thus, the Fomorians can step out from behind the scenes and say, hey, it's these evil elves. We got to finish them off one at a time. And not only that, here's what we'll do. We'll give you all of southern Albion. After we've defeated the elves, all their prime land will now become, domain of the human empires. And so this is going to work. Now, of course, the elves to say, wait, this is not right. They're lying to you. We obviously didn't do any of this. You know for a fact we didn't do any of this because you can see this going on. We're here to help you. Don't fall for this trap. Well, they kind of looked at the situation, and the leader of the party was like, well, I'm not sure we can beat these Fomorians with the group we have, with the fact that they still have some of the more automatons to work with that they are here, that are going to help them. I think we might be in a bad way. We might want to try to negotiate our way out. So the Fomorians said, look, here's the deal. Real simple. Kill the elf, join us, and we'll rule Albion together. Just like your forefathers wanted to do 200 years ago. Well, not what I expected to have happen is what happened. And that's when the game campaigns get interesting. They made the decision, like, okay, I don't think we have a choice. So let's kill the elf and join the Fomorians, and then they kind of tell them each other. And then what we'll do is we'll figure out a way to end up maybe attacking both of them, or figure something out down the road. But right now we've just got to deal with the situation, and we can't let this elven hero get back because he's going to spill the beans, and we're going to have to either ally with him right now and most likely die, or we're going to have to kill him and make the pact with the Fomorians. That's what they did. I did not expect that. Now, I'm always fascinated when changes and things happen in games and players make decisions I don't have, because when it now slides off the rails, and goes into this unknown area of gaming is when the game gets really fun, where it gets very interesting, because now players are making choices they might not want to make. And in this case, I was pretty sure that most of them didn't want to make this choice, but once the die was cast, the battle was engaged, it was what it was. The elf was finished off surprisingly in record time, and then the agreement was made. Now, they had gotten there on an elven boat. The elven boat was still there, so they were going to have to make up some story to go back and leave. So as they started to leave, they all thought, well, wait a second. Why don't we take our long rest here, get our experience points and everything else, so we'll be fresh and everything, and we can come up with our story and get it all coordinated, and we'll get back and we'll have only our story told and it'll all work out. And in the meantime, they made deals with Fomorians on giving them stuff to protect them from the worms if they accidentally attacked, because what there was a lot of the eggs of the great worm had been hatched by the Fomorians, and thusly how they were able to hatch their plot. Okay, that was working out. I figured that was going to be good. So this was sure changing my campaign plans for what we were going to continue on here. But it was great because, again, in a playtest, I'm just planning on just testing the waters to see how things go and how the game was working. And it was all going to be fine, whatever they did. The thing was, I'm still role-playing the game for these people. And not everybody liked this idea. So the cleric and his one other character he was running said, oh yeah, whatever. He kind of kept his mouth shut till he got back to the boat, and they were getting ready to leave. And they said, well, we're going to stay. And he says, yeah, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to tell everybody what you did. And I'm not going to let this happen. He steps out of the boat, basically tells the elves that these guys betrayed your hero. We got to get out of here now. They blew out and left to head back. Now, finding the jig is up. Now it's even getting more interesting, because when he gets back and he starts telling people that, hey, we have been betrayed, it's the Fomorians, we're trying to frame the elves who we don't like, but the elves really aren't the bad guys in this situation, so what are we going to do? And I was sort of thinking along that lines, how that was going to play out. And then they went back and said, well, what are we going to do? We can't catch the boat. The Fomorians don't have a ship fast enough to run down this elven boat, so I don't know, what can we do? And the dark elf goes, well, we do have another great worm here now. I mean, he's obviously not as big as Masasu, but he's as big as the ones you guys fought in your previous adventures in Albion. And they're like, okay, can he catch the boat? And he goes, no, but we know where he's going, and we'll send him to that point, and that will be the encounter. Now, that is where the adventure is now. We've had to take some time because of the holidays and everything else, and some sickness and some business, and everybody's very busy around this time. But what I have upcoming is the fact that, based upon what the player who left to go warn everybody about is being pursued by a great worm, that if he catches him, there won't be a battle. It'll just be, he catches you and you're dead. So it's going to be about how clever he can be in role-playing negotiations with me on what he's going to do to fix the situation. Now, for the players, I guess they're hoping that, he gets caught and his characters get wiped out. And in the meantime, he'll generate some new characters to continue on in the, bad guy side now, or maybe not bad guys. It's all a matter of, your perspective. So we'll see how that goes. And that's where we're at. But that's when the game becomes good, because now players are making choices that step out of the game and go into that role-playing aspect of the game where it is really interesting. And this is where I always say it is a cooperative storytelling, because I know Matt doesn't really think that on a lot of it. And I think that's a lot because he plays modules. But even if you're playing modules, it works. Step 2. Talking about that, my friend Mark Hobbs is running his 5th edition D&D campaign. He's run for years, and it is a reskinned 4th edition module that he's upgraded to play in 5th edition. Now, it's interesting, and we were going along playing, pretty much as you would imagine. Lots of role-playing. Mark's a big role player. Some combat, not a lot of magic. That's always not as good as everybody likes, because I like getting the goodies, but Mark tends to deal them out a little smaller, a little less often than I. Anyhow, we get in a battle, and then the thing that happens in this fight, that happens in a lot of fights, and what do you do afterwards? We start to lose, and we are losing badly. I mean, we're getting beat up by this giant ogre, his minions, we've killed off all their wizards, we're doing kind of good, we think we might have it in the bag, but then suddenly we realize there's 6 archers out there at long range who have really nasty bows, and they're doing lots of damage, and we're getting beat up. So at some point, our Minotaur hero goes down. And I realize that the bulk of the battle is gone. One other character's already retreated because he was so beat up he had to get out of there before he got finished off. And I get hit for a bunch, and my Tabaxi rogue realizes he's got 3 hit points left, and he's about to die because he's standing there backing up the Minotaur. So I decide to do the very, very brave and heroic thing. I run. Now, for those of you who know what a Tabaxi rogue with mobility is capable of doing, I run really fast. And boom, I'm gone. At this point, everybody realizes that we are going down the pipe, and they all flee and do whatever they can. And it was some of the most creative ways of escaping that you might have ever seen. The druid turns himself into a sort of large rat and is able to sort of hide amongst the debris, and other people turn invisible, and other people are, misty stepping into this building to have to deal later with what goes on. And the game changes. Now, we're all able to elude, to some extent, everybody. But the last adventure Mark comes in is to find out what happened to everybody now. Now, it was really kind of clever. I mean, it went very long, much longer than I would have hoped for an RP type situation. We played like 3 hours of role-playing, which was kind of fun, and then had a little battle. Now, the 3 hours of role-playing kind of discerned where everybody went and how they interacted and how they maybe were able to get back to their base point to reconnect. And we all sort of did that. And that was sort of interesting and nice role-playing. What we didn't, of course, know is the hobgoblins were all looking for us, and the leaders of the people who had attacked us were all hunting for us, and they were determined to find us. And, we thought we had eluded them. We were very clever, and some of us did, but someone got caught up by some scouts or spies and followed back to our lair, so that while we had a nice rest the next morning as we get ready to leave and figure out how to go rescue our hero, who we hear is now imprisoned in one of the dark dungeons, the hobgoblins bust in to the inn we're staying, and a battle ensues. And it's a pretty good battle, and we have a good time, and it's a large fight, and we're able to win that. And at the end of the battle, the big ogre and his guard, who is sort of kind of like a city marshal, come in, and they said, this time you're going to come with us. And we're like, nope, we're going to fight you to the death. We're not going. And they're like, no, somebody wishes to speak with you. We're not arresting you. You come with us, and we can maybe arrange to get your friend back. Now I'm thinking, okay. But this is the same thing we were talking about. Mark has a module type game. It runs at a certain character. It has its own progressions, and he knows it really well. But he got dealt with something he didn't necessarily, I'm assuming, figured out exactly how he wanted to deal with. And he did very, very well. We're now in a situation, we meet up with the guy, we have our various characters talking to this mysterious stranger who has a mission for us. And his mission is, I just want you to do what you plan to do here anyway. And do all the things you want to do. I do not want to interfere with them. But I want you to do one other thing for me. And he's laying this out and telling us the story of what we get to do. Well, it's either that or fight. And we weren't sure that we were going to be able to defeat these foes. So again, the pack has been made. But the point is now, Mark's campaign that was going in a certain direction, I'm assuming, gets derailed. And he has to then do the dancing and figure out how to put the pieces back together as best he can. And that's always what happens, and then get the mission going. So even if you are running modules, it's very, very possible for you to do that. You just need to know that when you step off the game, or the game goes out of your control, you have to take proactive action to make sure that you don't breach the game and just say, I don't know what to do, you guys lose, you're all dead, start new characters, because that's not very satisfying for most players. Now, loss of characters, sure. Sometimes, you get wiped out by people who are just going to eat you anyway. Okay, your campaign can end at that point. But Mark was very clever in making sure that it didn't. So now we have new life moving forward with new missions that are set based upon what happened here. Maybe even new allies. I'm not sure this guy was supposed to be maybe an enemy we were supposed to defeat, and now he's an ally? Hard to tell. I mean, obviously from a player standpoint, things look very different. But this is when the game gets good for the players. When players are making decisions on what they're going to do in their game and how it's going to push forward, it makes it very easy for the DM, me, to write adventures for that. Because I know where they're thinking they're going to go and what they want to go, so what things are going to happen and what things are going to not. And then I'm going to show you something real quickly here. It's a little dungeon, and I was playing Fantasy Trip, which I put my box back there so you guys could see from my fantasy trip box, I had the players basically fairly low level in a pretty much starting campaign we were doing. And they stumbled into, well, what I thought was a really clever trap, one of my original Murphy orc traps. So in this case, it was a hobgoblin goblin trap, but you'll see it and you'll understand it. It worked out great. But having run one or two before, not all the players bought it. And I'll tell you how it went out as I show you the little map and how it worked, and you can get a little fun. And if nothing else, this is how things work. But the great bit here is what I did is when they broke through and outsmarted me, I then allowed the players to take full advantage of the situation. And you want to do that. When the players sort of outfox you and they outthink you and maybe they even outplay you, man, pile on the abilities for them to have a good time and make it as fun for them as you can. It really does make for a great evening and a great story beyond that, and a great way of running your campaign forward when the heroes can feel like, look, we outthought you and we outplayed you and we all got some really great stuff for it. And that's what happened here. So take a look at the little map and I'll give you a little bit of info on that and we'll speak again. So though, until we have a chance to talk again, don't eat too much turkey today in your holiday. Spend great time with your friends because they're always not with you and sometimes you're going to miss them. And these days, which seem like kind of maybe like obligations you may not want to make, tend to be some of the best days you're going to remember in the future. So have a great day. Fight me, devils, fight for, well, I hate peace. And game on. So this is the little adventure I was talking about that basically it went off the rails. The name of the adventure was Dragon Bluff. Now, for those of you who have seen my videos and know who I am not opposed to killing party members if they bumble into things that are way above their head and don't take the hints. But they stumbled into this thing, they're thinking, oh God, a dragon? Really? There can't be a dragon. We're awful low-level characters. They can't get to that. But 3 children had been stolen from the village. That's what they were being paid to find. They were sending the only heroes they had, which of course were these guys. And it was not a particularly high-level adventure campaign. So these guys were fairly low-level fantasy trip characters. This is where the 3 prisoners were held. So my expectation is that they would descend down into the underground through this hole that had broken through the roof of this underground dungeon. They would see the dragon scales on the floor and the various footprints of this dragon. And there was some noise and smoke from this little fire brazier coming down there that they had thrown sulfur into to make it seem like, boy, this is a real dangerous place. And they had a piece of metal back here that they would rattle and make noise with and grattle on. And it just made sort of an eerie sounding thing that the party might think was the growling of a dragon or the snoring of a dragon or something like that. They got down the proceeding down into the dungeon. They went down here, found an empty room with 2 dead bodies. Obviously had been burned and chopped up, and there were lots of things. And they were like, that sounds like a dragon. That could be bad. The interesting thing was one of the party members thought, this sort of stinks a little bit. He picked up some of the scales and he made a roll and said, yeah, they're dragon scales. And he's like looking at the tracks and it's like, yeah, but he just doesn't quite buy it. He's thinking, that just doesn't seem likely to me that Jim's going to throw a dragon at us this early in the campaign. So a little metagame was going on. Again, they're looking over this dead body, same thing, long dead. Somebody noted, is the body been eaten? Did they eat the piece? And I said, no, just seemed to have been, hacked up and bits torn off and things. So yeah, maybe some of that was eaten. And they're like, I don't know. So they kind of go this way a little bit. They see some runes and a double door, and they're coming back and a broken down door here and an empty room. And they're like, okay. So they start to proceed down here. And one of the guys goes, can I look at that dragon scale? And he's like, sure. So the guy hands him the dragon scale. And this guy's like got some ranger skills and he makes a roll and he does it really well. And he goes, wait a minute, this is wood. Somebody just painted some wood chips here to look like dragon scales. I mean, they're pretty nicely crafted, but it's not really, a dragon scale. It seems like a piece of art. I think we're being hoodwinked. And they're looking down this long corridor here where the smoke's coming down and thinking, okay, this is where the dragons is. There's really nowhere to go. Wait a minute. Let's start looking for secret doors. And they do. Now, you'll note here little letters. I love treasure. So they stumble into this room, find a bunch of just debris and stuff. Looks like whatever junk had been captured that wasn't immediately valuable to the goblins had got dumped in here. And they search around and they're able to find a little magical item. And I think in this case it was a potion or something. Nothing really big, but it was in there. And I made notes of this up here. So you'll note that there's lots of things here on the group. These are magical items when they're on a creature side. are actually being carried by the monsters. There's no reason in the world that a smart creature is not going to carry magical items that they're able to use. And in this case, they were. They go through, they're just about to give up. And one of the guys goes, wait a minute, I think I found a secret door. And they did. And they went, this is a Murphy orc trap. I'm like, uh-oh, the jig is up. Now, when the jig is up, you got to give the players credit. So they sneak down here. They see this hole in the floor that goes down to this underground tunnel. They say, well, we'll get back to this. This could be a second level of a dungeon. They don't really know, but let's proceed on. Well, they proceed on and they find the back of the other door. All right, well, this is something. They listen. They don't hear anything, but they're like, this has got to be the back way in. So they open quietly the secret door and they find a little bed chamber of some sort of like goblinoid officer. And they're thinking, well, that's kind of cool. They say, well, look, we'll come back and search this later. And we go through the next one where they find another little bed chamber of another little goblinoid, leader. And they're like, this is really interesting. Now they go out in the hall. They see the hall goes down. There's light. Hall goes down to other doors, more doors. Now they see that. But down here are a bunch of goblins all hanging out, playing cards and eating and carousing, waiting for the next party to stumble down here that they can kill and capture and take all their good stuff. And the party goes now. They spring their trap. They leap in here. They leap through these doors and catch a bunch of the sleeping goblins who they dispatch. And a large battle ensues. But in this case, I gave the party advantage on every room they went into. They could get a free turn, and that really worked to their advantage. They were able to, in fairly easy order, get into a situation where they were tearing them up. They had eliminated these goblins. The ones that were coming out of here, they sort of just held at bay with an archer here. They got in here, killed the vast majority of the goblins, and they were fighting the infamous, soon-to-be famous Bogan Redcap. Party basically starts to win. They screw. Bogan and his last surviving minions hit the road and race down the hall with the party deep in pursuit, chase them into here, fight a few more goblin battles, up the stairs, and they find the place where the fire pit was and the little piece of metal that made the noise. They said, aha, we weren't trapped. Then they went back to finish off all the other goblins, which did flee out the secret door, and many of them were killed, but a few got away. So this is the idea that when you have a hero that basically is losing, he's not going to stick around and die if he can escape, because nobody wants to die. So he flees and then becomes an arch enemy of the party and the heroes for many a year. They then go back and search out. They go down into the underground thinking it might be another level, and they find another false door, which is like a poor secret door, and treasure. But the secret door was really only on the other side if someone had broke through the fake wall. So really, in this case, they were just able to go downstairs, go find the goblin treasure, which was pretty good. And they gathered up some other of the items that had been on the goblins that they had killed, and they deemed this a really good little success. And it was. They got good experience. They got some nice treasure. They didn't have any real horrible risks of dying, even though this would have been a very deadly campaign battle if they had been obviously stuck in the situation where they had come down here like I had planned, went around the corner, engaged the goblins that were here, and then all the other goblins would have gotten the alarm. They would have run down here, come out here, come down, down this thing, come out this secret door to come back behind them, and gone through this and moved this secret door to go through this false wall to come over here and hit them basically on three sides. That could have been devastating, even for lowly goblins against the party. But I was outsmarted, and thusly I made it as easy for them to sort of finish off the goblins as they could. I had the goblins' morale broken as soon as, of course, their trap is been turned against them. And mostly the goblins were fighting in a retreating stash to get out of here alive and save their skins. But this is just to show you the idea that often the games go off the rail, not what you planned. And I think that's, how you have to look at things, because this is when the game gets fun and interesting, is when the players do things you do not expect and get you to change your play. Don't become rigid and say, oh, you can't do that, or I don't, or whatever, and make it more difficult for them. I think it's often better to make it easier for them, because then it rewards that role playing you want, that good play and the fun times you have in games. So just something for you to take a look at. And oh, by the way, this is Fantasy Trip Dungeon from, I don't even want to guess, well over 30 years ago. Anyhow, I wanted you to take a look at it. Again, have a great Thanksgiving and all, and we'll talk again soon.